very much, Amy, and thank you to NATSO for allowing us this forum. We're very happy to be NATSO members now. My name is Joel Freewell. I am one of the marketing managers with Blink Charging. And joining me today are Michael Battaglia, our VP of Sales and Business Development, and also David Soens. These are two of our, David is our VP of Grant Operations, and these are two of our Blink All-Stars, and they're gonna give you a ton of fantastic information today. Like Amy said, if you have any questions, please just drop it into that Q&A section at the bottom edge of your webinar window, and we're very gladly going to get to them near the end of the webinar. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Mike. Take it away.
Great, thanks, Joel. Before we jump into the specifics, you know, this is I think there is the attendees on this webinar know this is a space that is changing extremely rapidly. It is sometimes a bit of a jigsaw puzzle to figure out where all of us fit in the landscape. And what we hope to do today is to provide a little bit of education, a little bit of clarity on what EV charging is, what the differences are between equipment that's out there, some of the funding opportunities that are present at the moment that will be coming down the line, and really just help everyone on the call to make a little bit of sense of what's going on. And I know that there's a ton of skepticism out there. There's, you know, do I jump into the market now? Do I wait? Do I wait and do I do something later? And when is this really all gonna take off? So that's where I want to start, right? Is by helping all of us to make decisions and to view the market with data, right? With not an emotional decision on, you know, internal combustion versus electric, and, you know, do we like it? Do we not like it? But what is the market telling us, and where are we today, and where will we be? Let's say in the next 10, 20 years. So first of all, this chart shows the growth of battery electric vehicle forecasted sales in the United States between now and 2028. And in fact, I'll make comments out to 2030. But before I touch on this, there's a couple things to note. Up until now, the electric vehicle market has been dominated by very few players, right? By far and away, it's been Tesla. And then to a lesser degree, it's been vehicles like the Nissan Leaf, like the Chevy Bolt, and others that have entered the market. One of the things we're seeing now, though, is that the inflection point is here. And in fact, one of the things that we argue at Blink is that the inflection point has already happened. And so we are now starting this hockey stick rise in terms of electric vehicle adoption. It does not mean that 100% of the vehicles in the United States will be battery electric anytime soon. There will be a role for both battery electric, and there will be a role for internal combustion with diesel, with gas, etc. So we really believe that these technologies are all going to coexist, and there will be others that come along as well. So, but a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, between now and 2024, 100 all new electric vehicle models will be brought to market by 2024. So by definition, that's not just Tesla, and you're already seeing it. You're already seeing it across model introductions from various automakers other than Tesla. For those of you that have paid attention, one of the watershed moments, I think, in the industry was, I believe it was last week, when Ford announced the F-150 Lightning, and that is their fully electric version of the F-150, which, again, in case anybody doesn't know this, has been the best-selling vehicle in the United States for 40 years in a row. So when Ford comes out with an all-electric F-150, that is a statement. Within 48 hours of Ford launching that F-150 Lightning, they had more than 40,000 pre-orders and deposits from consumers. So again, telling. But what this shows is that if we take this out to 2030, the minimum that people are forecasting now is that 1 in every 5 new vehicles sold in the United States, or 20% of the new vehicle market, will be battery electric by 2030. And in fact, there's been numerous revisions to this already, where most of the pundits and the talking heads out there are saying that it's actually going to be closer to 40%. And that has to do with different states across the country adopting zero emission vehicle standards by 2030, 2035. I mean, you name it, right? As well as other new vehicle entrants coming to market that weren't previously announced. So there's a whole set of factors that are converging that are enabling electric vehicle adoption in the United States. One of the keys to that is electric vehicle infrastructure, and where are we? So Joel, you can go to the next slide. All right, so as we move into this slide, what it shows is charging station sales within the United States, again, between now and out to 2030. There's a statistic out there that's been published that says that the United States is going to need 13 million charging stations by 2030. Now, let me kind of unpack that a bit. About 75% of all charging events will happen at home. So I have a garage, I buy a residential charging station, I install it in my garage, and I charge, overnight. Or I live in a multifamily dwelling, right? I live in an apartment building, and the property owner provides EV charging stations for me living in that apartment building. So about 75% of all charging events are going to happen at home. But that leaves the commercial charging space, which is the other 25%. And as we take this out to 2030, this is saying that we are going to be selling 2 million charging stations in the year 2030 to help support adoption and build out the infrastructure for electric vehicles. This other 25% of commercial charging can happen literally almost anywhere, right? So for the purposes of what we're talking about today, and in our partnership with NATSO, very much associated with truck stops and fueling stations, et cetera. So the question really is, what is the role for you all that are on this call in terms of EV infrastructure? So there's a couple. One is we're seeing tremendous activity along highway corridors. And in fact, there's no better guy on the phone to talk about this than Dave Soens, who's deeply involved with Blink on working with different states across the country that are launching infrastructure projects along major highway corridors to place DC fast chargers at different exit ramps, which will oftentimes include fueling stations and truck stops and things like that. So Dave, I don't know if you have any quick comments on that.
No, we can talk about it later in the slide too, but absolutely 100%. There's an initiative at a federal level and state level to drive infrastructure development for DC fast charging along all major corridors in the United States, and with a high level amount of interest in making sure that all the federal highways and interstates are contiguously covered with DC fast charging infrastructure.
Great, thanks. You can go to the next slide, Joel. So when we talk about this 25% of charging events happening commercially, it literally can be across any vertical market. And we see this at Blink. Anywhere there's a parking spot literally can be considered an opportunity. And one of the reasons for that is that the whole premise behind EV charging is different than gasoline and diesel fueling, in the sense that there aren't all of the environmental regulations. You don't obviously have to dig a hole and put a tank in the ground. This is about most of the time, existing electrical infrastructure, running conduit to a parking spot, and installing a charging station. Now, there are nuances to that, there are complexities to that, but at a very high level, it's kind of that easy. And it doesn't matter what the vertical market is. So the premise to this is anywhere somebody lives, works, or plays is where they want to be conducting charging sessions. So one of the interesting things about charging is that you can be doing two things at the same time. I can be at the gym, and if my gym has a charging station outside, I can have my vehicle plugged in and I can be working out while I'm charging my car. When we talk about specifically this channel for the folks on the line, one of the great benefits of EV infrastructure is that it typically demands some amount of dwell time, what we call dwell time, right? So typically when you're fueling your vehicle, you're there for 5-10 minutes, whatever it might be. But with EV charging, depending on whether you install level 2 charging or DC fast charging, you're probably on premises for a minimum of about 20 minutes, probably minimum. What that enables, and we've seen that this time and time again, is that the longer someone is at a fueling station that has other amenities like a convenience store and other things, is that they will tend to obviously spend more time in the facility and they will buy more. So you have this really kind of very cool phenomenon where, yes, EV charging takes longer than fueling an internal combustion engine, but we're also seeing residual benefit to property owners in terms of ancillary sales. So we can go on, Joel. All right, so a little bit about Blink. So won't talk about this for too terribly long, but this is our little commercial about Blink. We have been around since 2009. So if you think about that, right, we're going into our 12th year of business. In the EV charging space, that's like dog years. So multiply this times 7, right? We're way ahead we have been way ahead of this market, and it's only just now hit that inflection point that I talked about. But Blink, again, been around since 2009. We have a ton of experience in this market. In fact, we started our existence by reselling other providers' charging stations. And through that experience, we learned a ton, right? We learned about what products work well, what products don't, what products are easy to service, what products are not, what products are easy to maintain, and what are not. And then we learned a ton about installation and what is entailed in installations, both on the level 2 AC side, as well as the DC fast charging side. So we took that experience and we really built Blink to come out with our own level 2 equipment and to very smartly and strategically source our DC fast charging equipment. So a few quick statistics. We've deployed or sold, really at this point, it's about 9,000 residential charging stations. We have more than 5,600 commercial charging stations across 40 states. And literally, I think that we're pretty close to closing the gap to get to all 50. We have 190,000 individual consumers that are registered as Blink members. And what that simply entails is downloading the Blink mobile application, signing up for free. And I now have an account with Blink where I can locate all Blink charging stations across the United States. I can pay for my charging sessions at a Blink charging station, et cetera. So that's just a little bit about us. Just a little tidbit about growth. When I joined Blink about 10 months ago, we had 63 employees. We are now up to 150 and counting. So we are seeing tremendous activity and tremendous growth in the business, supported by folks like you, quite frankly. So we can keep going. So when we look at Blink's product line, it's actually super straightforward, very streamlined, and I think easy to understand. So we have 3 swim lanes that we predominantly play in. The first on the left is our AC level 2 commercial charging station, which is called the IQ200. So this is a charging station that when it is connected to a 100 amp circuit will output 19.2 kilowatts. And I'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but just to kind of put a parking spot or a pin in this, this is our AC level 2 charging solution. It's very flexible. It can be installed a number of different ways, a couple of which are in the photos here on the left. And then as we go to the middle of the slide and we look at our brand new portable IQ 200M, and M standing for mobile, this is actually a gasoline powered generator that is coupled with our IQ 200 EV charging station. Now, a lot of people laugh at when they see this, right? It's like, hey, I've got a gasoline powered generator and an EV charging station. Like, which is it, right? Are you playing in one world or the other world? And the truth is, this is a tremendous solution for where the industry is with roadside assistance applications and fleet applications today. So the premise to this product is predominantly if a consumer of an electric vehicle runs out of battery, either in a parking lot and they can't move the car, or more probably when they are out on the road, let's say out on the highway, they run out of charge and they're pulled over on the side. How do you rescue them, right? And right now, the only solution is you tow them, and you tow them to a charging station. But what this product does is enable roadside assistance operators to load this on the back of a truck or within a van or what have you, roll out to rescue that consumer, and to just fire up this generator to pop, let's say, 20 miles worth of charge into that EV that's stranded, and get them to allow them to drive to their next charging station. The final product, which is probably best suited for the audience today, is what we call a DC fast charger. So this is what's called a 3-phase product when we look at electrical. So this is 3-phase. It is installed on 480 power typically. These start at 50 kilowatts and can go all the way north of 200. So right now, the Blink product line starts at a 50 kilowatt unit and goes up to a 175 kilowatt unit. So I'll talk a little bit more about this and some things to consider. So first, we're going to start with the IQ 200, which again, this is a core product for Blink. The first thing that I want to leave you with is that the IQ 200 is the fastest level 2 AC charger available on the market. We actually designed and engineered this product to operate at the very top of the level 2 technical specifications. So the top of the level 2 spec is 80 amp. There's no such thing as a level 2 charging station that can operate above 80 amps. So when this charger is connected to a 100 amp circuit, it will draw 80 amps, and it'll output 19.2 kilowatts.
Yeah, the bottom one goes to the
Mike, you're muted if you can hear us.
Yeah, Mike, you need to unmute your computer there.
Okay, got it.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
there we go. So what that means is, let's say I have a Tesla Model 3 that is nearly empty. If I plug in that vehicle to this charging station, it'll take about 3 hours and 15 minutes to fully charge, or put another way, about a mile a minute. So if I'm a consumer and I'm on premise for 30 minutes, I could put about 30 miles on that Tesla Model 3 and I could be on my way. There are different ways to install this unit. It can be installed as a wall mount, let's say on the side of a building or within a parking garage. It can be placed on a pedestal like you see here in the photo, or it can even be installed on a light pole or utility pole with our light pole mount kit like you see here as well. A couple other things to note is that there's multiple ways for a consumer to pay for their charging session. They can download the Blink app, like I mentioned, and just initiate the charge that way. They can use, if they have a smart credit card with a chip in it, they can simply tap it on the screen and pay for their charging session that way. We have Apple Pay and Google Wallet slated to come online here in about 90 days. They could even call our 24/7 network operations center and initiate a charge over the phone with a code that our customer support personnel would give to a consumer, and they can just simply input it into the charging station. There are other smart energy management features in this charger. I won't go into them in depth, but things like if I have multiple chargers installed on the same circuit, they can share the load across multiple cars and distribute the energy in a smart way. So this is a really advanced product, super successful in the market, and one that we're super proud of. All right, as we go to the heart of this, though, we're going to talk about DC fast charging. And DC fast charging is, again, really the primary application for fueling stations, for truck stops, things like that. Now, I think that, as perhaps Dave will talk about, or I can mention, is that depending on the size of the facility you have, there's a place for both. There's a place for both DC fast charging and level 2. And as we engage with you to help you figure out really how to do all of this, we can suggest the right ratio between level 2 charging stations, which are much less expensive, as well as DC fast charging. So there's always a healthy mix between the two. But again, when we look at DC fast charging, these start at 50 kilowatts. We actually just released a couple of very cool new products, one at 50 kilowatts, one at 75 kilowatts, that have some really great features, things like they enable simultaneous charging. So what that means is I can have 2 cars parked side by side. I can have this particular charging station you see in white between the two, and I can have both cars plugged in with each of these cords simultaneously, and the unit will distribute the energy, split the energy between the two. And again, I can be charging 2 cars. These DC fast chargers are being shipped today with what's called a CCS cable and a CHAdeMO cable. CHAdeMO is a connection standard that is a legacy standard. It was developed by Nissan. It's what the Nissan Leaf connects to. Over time, the CHAdeMO standard will be going away. It's going to take a while, but it will be a declining market, where the market will be adopting, again, everyone except Tesla in the United States is adopting CCS. One of the features of this charging station is that that CHAdeMO cable can actually be swapped out and upgraded to CCS. So over time, and when the market dictates it, I can, without having to buy a whole new charging station, I can simply remove this cable, install another CCS cable, and now I have 2 CCS, and I'm right where the market will be. So again, 50 kilowatts, 75 kilowatts, we go above 100, and we go all the way up today to 175. And I think by next year, you'll see us above 200. Okay. Yep. Thanks. So the other element to EV charging, outside of the hardware itself, the requirements for installation, is the software network. All of these charging stations on the commercial side have to be connected to a software network. One of the unique things about Blink is that we're vertically integrated. We have both the hardware itself, and we own, operate, and developed the cloud-based software network that runs these charging stations. So first and foremost, what that enables is a seamless operation between the network software and the hardware that it's running. So oftentimes you'll see EV hardware providers that only provide hardware, or you'll see network providers that only provide software. And you have to select a hardware provider, and then you have to select a software provider. You got to put those together, and you got to hope that they work okay. In the case of Blink, you don't have to worry about that, because we have, again, integrated hardware and software, and it's all ours. What it does is a couple of things. If I'm a driver, again, if I have that Blink mobile app installed on my phone, as a driver, it enables me to locate Blink charging stations. I can see whether that charging station is currently being occupied. I can pin that charging station as a favorite. I can ask the app to actually guide me or route me through mapping software to take me to that charging station, etc. On the host side, or your side, where you would be the host in this case, is that you would be able to log on to the Blink network, and you'd be able to monitor and receive reporting on your charging station. So things like, how much revenue am I generating from the charging station? Are they operational at the site? How much do I charge for a charging session based on time or based on kilowatt hours? Do I have different features enabled within the network? Like if somebody leaves their car in the parking spot for too long and their car is fully charged and I want them to move out, I can actually set the software to ping that driver to say, hey, your car is fully charged. Please move it out of the way so that someone else can occupy it. And in fact, if you even wanted to do, you could implement a charge that gets initiated after a period of time, a surcharge, if somebody doesn't move their car. So things like that. Very flexible, very powerful software, and obviously very reliable. So we can keep going. So again, one of the very unique things about Blink, outside of the hardware and the performance and the robustness of it, is the fact that we come to the table with flexibility, and specifically flexibility around acquisition of charging stations and how you can acquire them. So we have 4 different business models primarily, and I'll touch on how each of these work. But as we go top to bottom on this slide, host-owned is simply when we sell you the hardware. And when we sell you the hardware, you are the owner operator of that charging station. You, in that instance, can control pricing of the charging station. So how much do you want to charge the consumer for the energy that gets dispensed? And you retain 100% of the revenue that gets generated from it because you own and operate it. The second down is what's called Blink as a Service. And this is a subscription model. And this is actually a really cool option. This is for someone that does not want the upfront capital expense of actually buying the hardware, and also does not want to own and operate it in terms of maintenance and things like that. When you execute Blink as a Service, we technically own the charging station. You pay us a flat monthly fee to, in effect, lease the charging station, and you maintain total control over it, meaning you, similar to the host owned, you get to set the pricing, you keep 100% of the revenue, you can kind of do whatever you want with that charging station. If you want to set it to free, you can do that and merely provide it as an amenity. So again, for a flat monthly, low monthly payment, over a period of time, you can subscribe to that charging station. If anything happens to it, we will roll a truck out there. We will pop off the old one that is not working well, and we will pop on a new one. So we take care of all of that. The third one is what we call hybrid owned. And this is where Blink actually will provide the charging equipment for no cost to you whatsoever. In the hybrid owned business model, the only thing that you are responsible for is running the electrical to the parking spot. So you take care of the investment from the electrical panel to the stub out at the parking spot. And then we come in and we install the charging station. We own and operate it, and we split the revenue with you. So now the hybrid, we only do for level 2 charging stations. So for this particular one that you see in the photo here, we do not do hybrids for DC fast chargers. We do host own, we do Blink as a Service. And in many instances, which which Dave will talk about, there's fantastic funding opportunities on the market to offset the cost of either a level 2 charging station or a DC fast charger. The final business model here is what we call Blink owned turnkey. And this is reserved for really high traffic, very attractive sites, or sites that have a significant amount of funding attached to them, both for the make-ready installation work as well as for the charger itself. And in this instance, we will actually come in and do everything. We will do all the electrical infrastructure. We will install, own, and operate the charging station, and that is absolutely at no cost to you. When we do that, we keep 95% of the revenue that's generated from that charging station. So we still include you in that revenue opportunity. We reimburse you for the cost of electricity that is generated by the charging station, But again, we own and operate everything from the panel all the way through to the charger itself. All right, keep going, Joel. And this slide really just depicts everything that I just said. So if you take a look at this, it's got these 4 columns, it's got these different business models. And so as an example, if we go down from the left, equipment ownership, that would be you, the host. Installation, you would be responsible for that. Electricity costs, again, that would be to the host. Supply, support, and maintenance, again, you, but you also keep all of the revenue. You have control over price. There's no contract required. There are also monthly network fees attached to that again are just for us to run the cloud-based software network and to handle payment transactions. That also gives you access to over-the-air updates. So as we make feature improvements, as we make performance improvements to the charging stations, those get updated over the air, either through cellular or Wi-Fi, to update that charging station. And again, as you go through this, you can see how some of these different rows change depending on the business model. So really that's it, right? That, a few things to leave you with is that Blink provides a full range of both DC fast charging and level 2 charging solutions. We own and operate the cloud-based software network to ensure seamless integration between the software and the hardware. We have flexible business models, and this again is really the key. So depending on your objectives, what you want to get out of EV infrastructure experience, we pretty well have it covered in terms of helping you to achieve those goals with our different business models. So, and again, finally, solutions across both residential and commercial. So those are just a few of the things that I wanted to leave you with. And if you wanted to, you could even hire us to do full installation work regardless of the business model chosen. So I think that rounds out my portion.
It does. Thank you, Mike. Before I turn it over to David, who's going to tell us a little bit about grants and give us some examples of the specific incentives out there. First off, Mike, thank you for that. That's a lot of information. That's great information. I do see there are already a few questions. And folks, I just want to remind you, as you get all this information, if you do have a question, go ahead and type it in now. Don't wait till the end, till we start the Q&A. So that first, so that you don't forget, and second, so that we get to your questions first. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David, who's going to tell us about grants, RFP, and utility incentives.
Great. Thank you very much, Joel. Michael, thank you for your presentation. That was great. Covered a lot of good details on what Blink can offer to you as customers. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Joel, thank you. So I'm going to give you guys a good overview of what the landscape looks like for the different grant programs that are out there, what different facets of funding that we can look at to address, scalable EV infrastructure development. And we'll start from, the first and most applicable situation that we use, and that's the state programs that have been issuing Volkswagen mitigation trust funds towards EV infrastructure development. So during that penalty phase of the breach that Volkswagen committed, they were fined several $billion, and that money was allocated to each state based on the percentage of cars that they had been sold with those typical diesel motor that they violated emission rules on. So with that funding, states had created different granting programs to offset CO2 emissions and NOx emissions. And so what they wanted to do is show a measurable difference and metric that's going to be utilized to show what the offsets are. And we can do that with the development of EV infrastructure in level 2 and level 3 DC fast charging. That grant funding allowed us to develop what the states in each state has designated as what their goals were for interstate coverage for DC fast charging along specific corridors that they've identified as where they would like to have the most impact the quickest impact to reduce fossil fuel emissions with EVs, and also with offering the public the opportunity to get fast charging in and have an increased amount of adoption based on infrastructure security with regards to the coverage. So when someone purchases an electric vehicle, that infrastructure is going to be developed and in place and operated by a reputational company like Blink to make sure that drivers get what they need when they buy the car. They have a program in place that's being developed nationwide through different states, and some states have been very aggressive about getting the chargers out there. So that's the one big component that we're working on now. The other opportunity that we've been seeing a lot of activity on is from the utility side. So utility side of this is that they have an interest in developing a new business case for what they offer with electricity towards transportation. They're learning, they're understanding what the opportunity is, and what they want to do is they want to encourage more development. So they will create rebate programs where you can get a residential charger at a rebate. You can get an approved charger level 2 for your fleet at your business through certain utilities. They'll also encourage you to have home charging for multi-unit dwellings. They'll have opportunities beyond that commercial fleet component all the way through to the DC fast charging side of things to supply the utility service district with adequate coverage and the opportunity to grow their business case, as well as offering assistance to the purchasers of EVs. So they get a credit towards that. They get a credit towards their energy. They have off-peak services and discounts. And what that means is you might have a utility that charges you a higher rate in the daytime peak use times. When they migrate over to the evening hours and there's less stress on the grid, they will offer a lower discounted rate for EV drivers that charge at say like after 9 o'clock at night and go all the way to like 6 or 7 in the morning. If you charge up a fleet of vehicles at that time, instead of during the daytime, higher utilization on the grid times, you'll get a discounted rate on your electricity as well. So that's another incentive that the utility companies offer on top of it. The big one that we like to use a lot is called make ready funds. It's very expensive to develop EV infrastructure, especially when you have fast chargers. So when, for instance, we'll take a site where we might have a convenience store on a highway, and there might be adequate utility service there to do this kind of upgrade, where we're going to have like 800 amp service brought in. We're going to have 4 DC fast chargers on site. We're going to be drawing a lot of power. They have to do transformer upgrades. They have to do larger conduit size, to bring power into the chargers. And the switchgear has to be beefed up as well. So there's a lot of behind the meter work that has to be done to upgrade a site from the utility side. And that's very expensive to do. So they also understand the opportunity for what they're doing. And they, in some cases, offer assistance with that, where they will provide the make ready funds up to a certain dollar amount on a specific site. And I'll give you an example. In Vermont, we're doing 11 sites with DC fast charging. 7 of those locations are in a utility district that they have credited us $40,000 for each location. We're developing that site on the utility costs for the upgrades to the grid in that region. So that is a very helpful financial mechanism that we utilize when it's offered and where we're developing DC fast charging. So the other sources might be some local incentives as well. And there's not really a lot to talk about there, but sometimes you can get up to $500 on a residential charger through a municipal program. So Active states where we'll see tremendous opportunity going forward. We've won grants in, as I mentioned, from Vermont, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Texas, California is a humongous opportunity for EV charging. Millions and millions of dollars are being allocated to making adequate coverage for fast charging and level 2 charging and residential and fleet charging and commercial charging available to the public to encourage more adoption of electric vehicles. And the reason they're doing this is because some states have mandated caps on emissions. They have created structures where you won't be able to purchase fossil fuel vehicles at some date in the near future. I think in 2035, it might be California's strike date for when you really won't be able to buy many vehicles that are piston engined fossil fuel burning, and they have to be clean emission vehicles. So other states have embraced that as well, and you'll see a big push through regulation being the main driver of eliminating their emissions in the state to meet their air quality targets. So as those mandates start to fall into place and sort of drive the market, they've realized there's stress on the system to make it happen. And one of those stress points or a pain point is like, okay, we're going to mandate this to happen, but how do we expect everyone in the market, in the free market, to react to this if it's an expensive obligation that has to be met? And that's through these grant opportunities. So with these opportunities and the states that are embracing it, we'll see a big push to get from companies like Blink to get more infrastructure in the ground, to get more adequate coverage for the drivers.
And just a quick point on this slide, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the states we're looking at now, those are states with state-funded programs. There may be utility programs or local programs in other states other than the color ones, correct?
That's correct. So the highlighted states are states that are just highly active in multiple programs with utility engagement as well as state engagement through different agencies to help fund this.
Right.
There are other states in here that have programs that are in place that are, and this is all changing in real time. Every day something new opens up. So
I think that's the key point of
our slides can change by the day in this business because that's how fast things are moving. And we'll be happy to talk to and entertain customers' options with the states they're in to help encourage future development options. So let's talk about how we go about this. Like what's the process look like if you're interested in developing EV infrastructure with Blink? So first we have to do is an evaluation. We have to look at what this site looks like, what power availability is there, what is the grants that we're going after, is there make ready funds, what other opportunities can we utilize to make it a successful development project and partnership going forward. So if we make a decision that your site fits the needs of what the grant funding agency is looking for and what Blink is looking for to develop, we will go for a next step where we'll apply for the grant with that specific location in mind. We'll do a further detailed analysis with our construction group to make sure that everything will sort of conform to the points that we're going to be looking for to be awarded on the grant with. And then after we submit, we'll do a confirmation. One of the things I forgot to mention is that we have to have, in most cases, is a letter of intent with the landowner or the business owner that has a long-term lease saying that they agree to a 10-year term and with an extension. So that's usually one of the thresholds that we see from the site host, side of things with the grant agency. They will require that. Some states have also required a fully executed and agreed to contract. So as we go forward with more and more of these opportunities that have come up, it was a little bit loose a couple of years ago, but the granting agencies have seen things fall through where the LOI wasn't strong enough, and a fully executed agreement is usually what they're looking for, to make sure that if they decide to agree and fund a location, they want to make sure and be positive that that site will be developed to meet their goals. Because if it doesn't happen, the whole thing was a waste of time. And it's a lot of people's efforts involved here, not just from our position at Blink, but also from the state agencies that are putting the funding together and putting the efforts to make sure that they meet these targets that they're setting. And if we have things fall apart because of an LOI, it's not good for anybody. So that's why they're looking for more and more defined and executed agreements that will hold and make sure that the development program goes forward when they do an award. That gets us to the point where we have to say we get awarded on your site. We then have to sign a contract. We have to make sure that we're going to honor the timeline that they've set for us to finish the project on. And it's usually about a year to 2 years of a window they give us to do the whole thing, soup to nuts. That a typical project will only take about 6 months to fully do, but getting to the permit level is a lot of time with engineering. It's scheduling with utility companies. It's getting the equipment ordered, and it's also, there's a multiple, huge checklist to get there. In some cases, it could take up to, a year, depending on, things like COVID that are unpredicted, and state offices close, municipal offices close, and getting a variance meeting together or getting even a permit is a very difficult task sometimes, at those times of stress that are out of our control. So that will extend the amount of time that will take to complete a project, but it looks like things are getting a little better, and we should be able to hit our targets of 6 to 8 months for a completed turnkey project.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thanks, David. I just wanted to reiterate for everybody, this is a lot of information. We do understand that. You can always please ask your questions now. Mike's actively answering them on the chat. We appreciate that, Mike. And if you need more details on any of this, you can always come to our website, blinkcharging.com, or our contact information for the three of us will be made available after the presentation. You can just reach out to us directly and we'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and Joel, we're going to be providing a copy of this, correct, to the attendees?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay,
The presentation, the entire webinar will be available on NATSO's website, and the presentation will be made available. Yes. So sorry, David. Let's continue and. Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so wanted to talk about some different opportunities that have come up that we apply for, and also the states that they're in that are aggressively seeking these development opportunity programs to take place. So New York, NYSERDA has a Charge Ready program, total funding of 17 million. They opened this on a rolling basis to meet the needs of what they're doing statewide. So we have several counties that are in an open application period right now. On the DC fast charging side, we look to accomplish about an 80% amount of money to be allocated towards the project. We don't meet that target all the time, but that's usually the goal. Some states don't go that high. They will go as high as 75 and sometimes 60%. And federal grants are usually 50-50. So it's a little bit less, but it's still there to help out. Can you go back to that slide for a second, Joel? Because I want to talk about a difference in, we know that California's got the California VIP. They also have the Volkswagen Mitigation Fund that's open right now that we're applying for. So it's very similar to the New York program and other VW programs, but only larger companies can apply for those grant funds. So they know that a comprehensive, well developed team that has the resources, the capital, and the ability to see out several projects and meet their targets can do. So that is why we partner with different companies and agencies and scale partners that can help develop this. So one, we have the resources to make sure that we are getting awarded these grants because we can see them through and make sure that they get built and constructed and commissioned and offered to the public within 99% uptime, on the charging equipment, so they're maintained and operated. Those are the key features that the states are looking for. They want to make sure that a company that's going to win these grants is going to be able to operate them and keep them efficiently run and maintained and managed all the way through the entire duration of what our obligations are on the grant terms and contract, which will go out to 7 to 10 years. And that's why we signed a 10-year agreement, because they obligate us to supply them with that data. They have thresholds that we have to meet with the uptime on the chargers and the maintenance of them, and then the future proofing of them. So there's a lot of thresholds and contractual obligations that we have to do that. So that's why it's important to make sure you're partner with a company that's going to be able to offer that kind of and level of service and ability to see it through. The Colorado opportunity, like Wyoming as well, or Utah, I'm sorry, have a little bit of a different opportunity with Charge Ahead. Their rolling amount of cash for projects comes in from different departments, so they don't disclose what the total funding available is, but they will provide assistance towards charging sites, but the site host has to be the applicant for that state. For that particular program, they did have another program that we applied for that was a little different than this one, where we were able to apply, but we will partner with interested parties that want to develop in Colorado and in Utah, but they have to be the party that applies for the grant, and we can assist with that. So that's why I wanted to hang on to that slide for a second, Joel, because each state does it a little differently.
Yeah, thanks, David. And we'll see a couple state-specific examples. If we can move through them quickly. I'm just saying because we already talked about a lot of it, and we have some questions still to answer.
No problem. I'll go quick. Sorry. There's just so many details. I want to make sure I cover the big broad strokes as much as I can. Sure. California has, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a tremendous amount of money to develop EV infrastructure. We have this Edison program that we're a qualified EVSE provider for that program. Our fast chargers and our level 2 chargers are set up to be enrolled in that program and a program participant. So we are excited about that opportunity. We lead. California does lead the nation in adoption. They have over 5.3% of the passenger vehicles sold in the state are already on the roads and driving. So that's just a phenomenal number that to see compared to the rest of the country is around 2%. But California is way ahead, and I think the rest of the country is going to start catching up. I think Mike touched on a lot of where the market looks like in his statements earlier, so we won't cover that. And then these are the programs where it's open.
Yeah, I think the slide is good to reiterate that not all programs are just statewide. A lot of them can be localized to a county or a utility area or a city, right?
That's right, Joel.
Yeah, and the recommendation is always, you can obviously do the research yourself, but you please reach out to us and we can help you identify any incentives that are in the local market.
Right.
Yeah, for example, this is one such program of Southern California. So.
Mm-hmm. So there's very ambitious goals that they have, as I mentioned earlier. They want to get to 35 to 40,000 charge points in their service territory. They have this program with rebates engaged, so customers and site host owners can apply, and we can help assist you with that, and to help get more chargers in the ground.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's another example. I know we don't have a lot of time, but of thresholds where you can get certain amounts of the costs, up to 100% of DCFC costs in a disadvantaged community. So L2s can also be covered, which is the level 2 charger for multi-unit dwellings and disadvantaged communities. So in communities where there's just not going to be a lot of effort made to develop that infrastructure in those communities, but they still need to be serviced, there is a tremendous amount of upside for companies like Blink and operators of fueling centers to take advantage of those locations and utilize these funds to get the EV equipment in the ground, operating at no cost to you. There'll be some minor costs, but a lot of it would be covered under the grant. And then in some scaling down to 90% for standardized plug types outside of disadvantaged communities with the L2 and DCFC. That includes municipal, pay to park, and free parking locations. And then you have the publicly available chargers that are going to be servicing the community around these disadvantaged locations as well. So you can have a decent amount of coverage. So I'm sure we can pull up the maps and go into more of a granular detail about this on where you're located if you have an interest in developing EVSE with us. And then once you get down to non-public, they have a 50% threshold, and we can talk about that too. But there's different scales, and we can see where you fit if you have an interest.
This is the New York.
Okay. The New York. So yes, we've applied for this. There's 11 million in DC fast charging available. There's going to be the southern tier is open right now, and Mohawk County region is also open. And we would love to talk to you if you have locations for us to pursue. And this closes in mid-July. We just heard that it's going to be extended into August. So that hasn't happened materially yet, but we do know that they are extending the program because they're making some minor changes to what they're going to make us do in terms of the size of the chargers might change, and the amount of chargers that might change that they're going to make us be obligated to. There was a minimum of 75 kilowatt chargers. It might be raised up to 100. Or even higher. So you'll start to see as technology changes, and you start to see as the vehicle's capabilities change, there's going to be changes made in what the states were going to start to ask us to deliver in these grant awards. And that is something that NYSERDA has already pivoted on in real time. So we'll start to see higher power, and we'll also see more interaction with utilities where they have to have the power available and provide that. So another good opportunity of how things change and pivot from the granting side of things.
Yeah, and those are DC fast chargers on the screen, by the way. They're just beautiful.
Yes, these are chargers that we developed in Michigan. That's Lake Michigan behind that photo right there at a Burger King location that we developed. And those are the 50 kilowatt tritium Blink chargers that we've installed there. So that's what they look like. And
thank you for the information, David. Folks, right now is the time. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. We do have 3 open questions that Mike hasn't got to yet. So we'll just clarify those for the good of the audience. Mike, if you're up for it. Question from David. David asks, just to clarify, Blink chargers are not compatible with Tesla? Or Mike just answered.
Yeah, cool. I just answered it, but I'm going to answer. I'd like to actually answer that one live. So the answer is that Blink chargers are 100% compatible with Teslas. You do need an adapter. So when you buy a Tesla, it comes with what's called a J1772 adapter. And so you, for instance, you can go to this charging. Well, you see it in the picture. There's a Model 3 connected to a Blink. Good job, Joel. There's a Model 3 connected to a Blink charging station, right? So the Model 3 comes with this adapter that connects to the J1772 plug on the Blink charger, and then connects into the proprietary Tesla adapter in the vehicle. So that's for AC level 2. There is a different adapter that's required for DC fast charging, and it's amazing, but many Tesla owners have bought them, but they run about, from what I understand, they run about $400 or $500 to buy one.
All right, great. Thank you for that answer there, Michael. Let's see. We have another question from Rushi. He says, does that off-peak rate just change my energy charge or demand charges? I assume that goes to the off-peak hours and that sort of thing for level 2.
That does not change your demand rate. It changes your kilowatt rate that you're charging. So if you have like a 18.5 cent kilowatt rate in peak hour time, and at nighttime you might have a 9 cent. Like it cuts your kilowatt rate in half. And it's different by all utilities. So some have the opportunity and the option to get off-peak charging rates lowered, and some utilities do not. But depending on the utility, you have to check with them, and it does not affect. It doesn't. Your demand fee is not included in that reduction.
Great, thank you, David. Okay, let's see. A question from Mark. It says many rural communities out west are finding that utilities are not able to handle 480-volt fast chargers without substantially upgrading their capacity, meaning their electrical infrastructure. This condition delays installations for as much as a year in some areas. Have you faced this in other areas impeding build out?
Yes, we're highly aware of that problem. That's underserved regions. We have solutions that can be developed to alleviate that pain point. It's a very expensive solution, and if without grant assistance, it's very, very hard to accomplish. We're really going to be leaning on more utility engagement for these types of developed programs that not just Blink has a high interest in, but the federal government has a high interest in, and state governments that will help utilities develop more robust grid applications for fast charging.
Oh, thank you, David. That's very interesting. I didn't know about that problem. Question from Rory. I think it's a very timely question. What kilowatt for DCFC should we aim for at this time? Mike, you mentioned the kilowatt rates for DC fast come from 50 all the way up to the 200s.
Yeah.
So what should folks be looking at right now?
So I just answered it, and it's a good question. It's another one I kind of wanted to answer live is, everything in DC fast charging is a trade-off between cost and power. In other words, they kind of go together. The bigger and faster the DC fast charger you purchase, generally speaking, the more the installation cost is gonna go in step with that. The strategy that I like right now is that we offer a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger that is upgradable to 75. So you can get into the DC fast charging market at a very competitive price point that won't necessarily, again, all depends, every location's different, but break the bank on installation. And you have the option to then install just another 25 kilowatt module into the charger and upgrade it to 75. And that offers simultaneous charging and a lot of the other bells and whistles that come with this new charger line. So it's kind of what I like, but again, can depend on a couple of factors.
Thank you, Mike. We do have one more question, but before we get to this last question, Mike, quickly, Can you touch on why it's such a big deal that the DC fast chargers that Blink has can connect two vehicles? Because most folks have maybe driven and recognized a DC fast charger and they see two cords there.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
assume, why not two vehicles? So
Most of the
that's what I was-
chargers, yeah, it's a great question. Most of the chargers up until now have only supported charging one car at a time. So even though you have two cars plugged in, what the chargers historically have done is all of the power has been routed to one cable. And then when that car is finished, however long that takes, it then will transfer to the other car and charge that car, as opposed to the new technology, which splits so that, again, two consumers can be charging at the same time and kind of get on their way. So
Great.
from a customer experience perspective, much better.
Right. And I think some of those old ones too, correct me if I'm wrong, the only reason they had two cables is because they had two connectors, the Chatamo legacy that you talked about in the CSS.
That's exactly right. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So last question is from David, not David Soens, another David. He asked, what are the basic requirements when evaluating the turnkey model? Traffic count number, specific locations, question mark.
Yes to both of those. We also look at the number of EVs registered in the market. We look at average household income, and then we look at, whether there's any funding opportunities available. So, the charger, like for instance, this charger that you see in the picture, MSRP runs $4,000. Then you have the installation cost on top of it, which is anywhere from 5 to 10, right? Depending on the site. So for Blink to go in and do the entire thing, it'll run anywhere from, again, on the value side of the equation, $9,000 to $14,000 roughly is the investment that we would make. So we just have to be judicious about the spots we pick to do that to make sure that the ROI is there.
And are DCFC available for turnkey?
They are when we own and operate them, and it is associated with a funding opportunity. Yes.
Great. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. I want to thank you both for all of your time and all of the great information you provided. And I want to thank the audience for bearing with us and being here. And again, I want to thank Amy and NATSO for giving us this
Very much,
platform
thanks.
to be able to join and be part of the NATSO family. So
Well,
with that,
yeah,
Amy, I will
absolutely.
turn it
Thank
over.
you. We had so many great questions. That always makes me
You
happy.
did.
And if we have more, I dropped my email, my editor at natso.com, and we'll be sure to put this on our website. And I took pictures of all the answers. We'll be sure to share them with everybody. And hopefully folks will reach out to you if they have more questions.
Great. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good day.
Bye.